All right, so I did a quick little review. You had listed dog reactivity and cat reactivity.
Yeah.
Is this outside? Is this inside?
It's outside and inside. Didn't know about inside until we've got a cat inside, but you know.
Okay, sure.
But no, he's reactive with dogs and
Other
cats.
animals. Yeah, he's really good with people. It just
He also doesn't seem to care about birds.
yeah,
But-
it's just other dogs. He's very like anxiety reactive.
Okay.
So if he feels like threatened or anxious, like that's
Or if
when
he's
his
just like
aggression
not
comes
sure
out.
what's going on, he'll get defensive.
And
Yeah.
that's why it's been hard. 'Cause I trained a service dog growing up, and she was not reactive to anything. She was well socialized, so it was really easy for me to do obedience training. And he gets there to a point, like he'll listen to a point, but once it starts getting to the point of like where he's reacting because of his anxiety, it's hard for me to do things with him in a way that like it processes well for him. Because he's just out of fear, so it's been hard for me to try and like
Get through.
get through that. And
Inside, when there's not a whole lot of distractions, he's happy to listen.
yeah,
Outside,
he does really well.
he's a street dog for a while, so I think he just is very focused on his surroundings and trying to stay safe.
How old?
It's like
Six, yeah.
six-ish.
And you've had it for how long?
Since like December of 2019. So
Okay.
Yeah, he's
Got
had
him.
him for longer. I've been with him for like a year, so he's definitely made progress, and it's been decent enough for us to not. I mean, we can go closer to dogs now, and he does fairly well listening. But if as soon as they come closer, or if they start barking at him, he will. You can definitely
Trigger.
see like he starts to really get riled up.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Have we had any incidents, like any bite-in taps or bites at all?
yeah, he's gotten got loose and went after a dog
Okay.
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
From your like loose from the leash or loose from the home?
No, it was in a park.
Okay.
Like we had him running in an enclosed space, and the gate wasn't closed well enough, so he kind of pushed his way out.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So he's in the enclosed space. We see a dog in passing. It triggers him. He goes, is able to escape, and then went after the dog.
Yeah.
Was there any punctures? Was it just
Yeah.
more of a scuffle, or?
No, he got some punctures on the other dog.
Okay.
I had to come in and break him up.
Okay. Was there any shaking at all, or was it just a bite and hold?
It was just a bite and hold. I think it's a similar sized dog.
Okay.
And he doesn't. Yeah, he'll shake his toys, but no, he just kind of bit and hold.
Okay.
Held.
How long was that for? Would you say? A few seconds or
Less than a minute.
less than a minute? How'd you get him to disengage?
I had to go in and just
Yeah.
Pry his mouth open.
pry his mouth open. Yeah.
Okay. Was it difficult, or was it easier than you thought?
No, I mean it was not easy. He was on there. He was on there pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
It's just all that information tells me or gives me an idea of intensity of what we're dealing with. Aside from that incident, have you had anything similar happen, or was that like the first time?
I think once.
For-
For you, it was
for
the
me,
first
it's the
time.
first time.
Once, like 4 or 5 years back, he had a similar thing. Ran out the back door. The neighbors were out with their dog. Same thing. Just kind of grabbed on, puncture wound. Wasn't like shaking or anything, but just refused to let go.
Okay.
He was at a shelter before, and we have videos of him around other dogs, and he wasn't like engaging with them. He was kind of
Standoffish,
like,
but he was
but
tolerant of their presence.
He didn't. He wasn't aggressive, and he had him during COVID. So I think the like not socializing really did something to him.
It's not allowed to really be close to people.
Yeah. So since then, it's been different for him because
sure.
he was more.
He lost that socialization.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that happened with a lot of dogs during COVID. I mean, I had clients that I met before COVID whose dogs were social, and then when things started to open up again, I started getting
they haven't seen
emails
other
and
dogs
calls.
in years and years. Yeah.
Then there was a lot of fights and stuff like that. Okay. Who introduced the prong collar?
I did, because that's what I used for my previous service dog, and it was really good. I trained with another trainer who helped me, and it was really effective for her. And for him, it's been a helpful tool, but it's definitely because he's reactive, there's like a very fine line. And so we've been trying to do more training with him inside without it, and he does well. But as soon as we get outside, there's no other way that we can control him with other dogs.
Just to get his attention, even.
Yeah, literally just to get his attention. Because if we try and just use his regular collar, he will just continue to pull. He doesn't care if he's choking himself or anything.
Sure, yeah.
And for me, he's a lot stronger than I am. Bobby can control him better and actually like pick him
I
up.
can just scoop him
by-
up
He
if I need to, but-
outstrengths me. So for me, the prong collar is a useful tool. If we get close to another dog enough to where he's like reacting, I can at least pull him away.
Okay. No, it's a great tool, for
yeah.
sure. What were you walking on before? Was it just your flat collar?
Yeah, just the flat collar. We had a slip lead for a long time that we were using.
He had a harness before as well too, that they were using.
I gotcha. Okay. How'd you guys hear about us?
I looked online.
Okay,
I did a
just
lot
Google
of research.
search?
Yeah.
We also drive past here a whole bunch. And
Oh, sure.
this is just the little dog trainer alley.
Yeah, yeah, it is for sure. Let me think here. Any dog friends at all?
No dog friends.
Okay. Have you at any point like tried like before like the shutdown and everything or?
Yeah, tried a bit. I think even with like a couple of, within a couple of months of not being around other dogs, he'd already started to be kind of defensive of me, or protective, I guess. Then we also put a bunch of effort into kind of trying to get him closer to like a fence in a dog park.
How did that go?
Yeah, could get him pretty close.
Okay.
Same thing, taking advantage of the neighbors have a dog who just kind of sits out in front of the porch who is not very reactive to dogs. So just kind of getting him comfortable there. So you get him to sit still and be within a couple of feet of that guy. But still any closer than that, and Bones would start to get snappy.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else I should know?
I don't think so.
The cat, is that a new addition?
Cat is a new addition, yeah.
Okay. And then I'm assuming barking when you saw the cat or what happened
Barks,
there?
whines when he thinks the cat is nearby.
Okay.
If you're holding a cat-shaped object, sometimes he'll just bark just in case it might be the cat.
Sure.
But yeah, just aware of it as a
How long the cat's been around?
6 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Have you noticed any decline in his behavior? Like, has he seems to settle in a little bit more, or still?
I think from the beginning, definitely, but it's still reactive enough that we have to keep them separate.
I gotcha.
And we do try and like pass him by if the cat is there, and he's getting better at not reacting, but not enough for us to trust him to just be around the cat.
Yeah, I mean, they still couldn't be. Yeah. Still go after him, and the cat would also just antagonize him.
Sure. Has he been muzzle conditioned? He's doing pretty well with what you have here.
Yeah, he's tolerant of it. We don't use it too often, just because we expected there'd be more dogs around here. Honestly, I mean, they're in the
There's
back
more.
rooms,
It's quiet here.
Yeah.
So they're all in that room there. So that's why you see them going. So that's our kennel room.
Yeah.
And that's the activity room. So essentially, what you see on the top right camera there. So you see like dogs on dog beds and stuff. Yeah. Whereas most daycares would be like loud, ours is quiet. So it differentiates us because we do a lot of structure.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, he's he'll paw at the muzzle, try and take it off, and I think if he's left to his own devices, he will. You can't attach it more securely than we have, but yeah, he's pretty tolerant of wearing stuff.
Yeah. No, he's doing pretty good. Because I see he still has his dew claws, and like when dogs really want to remove the muzzle, what happens is the dew claws get caught, and they'll either rip off the nail or the shell of the nail. I've seen dogs like just tear up their faces because they're just obsessively trying to remove it, and he's doing pretty good. I see a little bit earlier, like a couple of times, but that's just like a fraction of like.
He's not. Yeah, he doesn't flip out like other dogs do.
That's pretty good. It makes life easier.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming before booking this, you read into how we train, the methods that we use and tools we use, right? So we do use prong collar from time to time, but I train predominantly with remote collar, which is e-collar. Are you familiar with the technology at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys ever had like TENS therapy or stim therapy?
Yeah.
The muscle contraction machine? Yeah, so that's an e-collar. A lot of times when we talk about e-collar, people think electrocution. They think like a current running through the dog's body. Oh no, it's electric but not electricity. It's just a muscle stimulator.
Yeah.
And the reason why I use that tool is because dogs are physical creatures. They nip and bite each other, right? They nip and bite as a form of play. They nip and bite as a form of affection, as a form of correction, as a form of protection, frustration. They use a lot to outlet, right? They're very mouth-based creatures. So your prong collar, that's the reason why it looks that way, is it's meant to mimic a dog bite. Whereas most people would see it and they go like, oh, that's just torturous, right? You know, no, there's a reason why it's designed this way. So with the remote collar, I like to refer to it as a bite on a button. Because when I press the button, it's going to cause a muscle contraction. And if we've conditioned it in the way that the dog understands, they perceive it similar to a dog bite.
Yeah.
So for example, if we have a dog who's social, but overly social, and doesn't have good boundaries in play group, if we've trained them, we could put a collar on them. And when we see them getting a little intense, we can correct them on the collar to de-escalate them, but they'll continue playing. They just don't go over that threshold. And that's how we're able to like do, you know, quiet play groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in other contexts, like for example, obedience, we can use it to shape the obedience. We can shape sits, we can shape heel, we can shape come, all that stuff through the e-collar. But at the same time, we can also correct behaviors we don't want. In this case, it would be the reactivity. To a degree, we can correct the aggression. I actually just had a client, I actually have to email her to see how things are going. She has a cat that she had previously who did well with their previous dog. That dog passed. They got a new dog, and the dog is social with the cat, but the cat doesn't like the new dog.
Yeah.
So we did a session so I could help her to get the cat to get more acclimated to the dog. But her dog's easy. It sounds like for him, potentially a little bit of prey drive.
It might be potentially.
What about squirrels, rabbits, birds? Care about that?
Birds doesn't care. Squirrels cares a little bit.
If they move like fast enough in front of him, sometimes. But I don't know.
But he whines at it more like he whines after like a dog. Yeah, it's he's going after it like like a dog, not like a squirrel or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like that can be corrected as well, so that we could teach coexistence.
Yeah.
It would be, of course, in controlled context. I'd never suggest leaving them alone unattended because something could always happen.
Yeah.
If we try to socialize, we can use it to, if he became agitated or aggressive, we can correct it to teach him that's not an option to help try to socialize him. Will he be like a dog park dog? No.
Yeah.
But if you have friends who have dogs and you did controlled context, that's more realistic because we have control over all the animals, as opposed to a dog park where there's 10 animals that you can't control and only one that you can. So the two incidents that you described, I believe, were territorial, okay, because they both involve escaping a space, okay. So to give you an example, I had a client that was a Pittie, rescue, social, played with the neighbor's dog countless times. And then one day they opened the front door to let the dog go potty in the yard. What they didn't know is their neighbor's dog had escaped their yard and went into my client's yard. So their dog runs out, runs to the back, and then attacks the dog.
Yeah.
Okay. So when they told me this, they're like, Jesse, we don't understand because they play all the time, but then in this instance, she attacked the dog. I go, it's because territorial behavior. When the dog left the home and knew something was not right, right? Sensing there was another thing in the yard, just automatically goes into territorial mode, okay?
Okay.
Same client, dog was completely friendly with people. They had a back garage. The dad or the granddad was coming in from the back garage. Same thing happened. They opened the front door. Their dog ran out, bit him on the hand. And had never bit anyone else before or after. And same thing with the dog. Never attacked the dog before or after. It was just these contexts. And I was like, that's territorial. That's not the dog actively seeking to attack something. Does that make sense? It's hard to explain, but when a dog escapes a space, they go into a certain mindset. It's a certain state of arousal. And especially if there's already a target, it's just going to outlet on the target. Okay. So the first one would have been like in the, or the second one really, in that enclosure that you were in that wasn't closed correctly, right? Saw a dog that got his attention and then goes out, right?
Yeah.
It's just kind of the escalation of things. The other one, you said going out the back door or something, and then the neighbor was out with the dog, right? So that to me, both of those things sound like territorial. Obviously not acceptable, but once you start to understand these things, you can kind of see like ways to prevent or address. And I don't really take it as aggression. Okay, so an aggressive dog that's aggressive for the sake of being aggressive is like super rare.
Yeah.
Okay, dogs are aggressive for a reason. Territorial aggression, maternal aggression, resource guarding aggression, right? There's usually a word that's attached to it to describe why it's happening. Okay, so then we just have to figure out why is it happening so that we can address that root cause.
Yeah.
Not too bad for a Pittie, but overstimulation. Are you familiar with this? Yep. It's the inability to relax, right? Pitties are kind of known for this. Like right now, it's been approximately 15 minutes. And he's starting to settle, which is pretty good. I get dogs that will be here the entire time and they cannot relax. Okay, so a lot of anxiety and or overstimulation. And then that can also outlet into these kind of reactivity responses because when the dog goes out, they're already over threshold. And then they see something and that just stresses them out more. And then we get the reactivity responses. Okay. So when we do remote collar training or behavioral training, most of the time people think that we take your dog, put the collar on them, bring a dog out, force the behavior, and then start to slam it. That's technically an approach, but it's not the approach that we use from the get-go. The first thing that we always do is a proper heel, which is walking without tension on the leash. A correctly trained heel can fix about 70% of problems. Okay, so we always start with that first, and then we go, what does it fix? So we do the heel. I train you to train the dog. You go off and you do your homework for a week. Okay, you come back and you give me feedback. Hey, Jess, his reactivity is 50% better, 30% better, 80% better, whatever it is. And whatever you tell me then lets me know what I need to do next. A lot of times, it's just adjusting the number. So the e-collar has 127 respective levels of stimulation, 1 through 127 in increments of 1. Okay, so we can really fine tune it to the dog, personality type. Every case is different. I can't predict what it's going to be. I have a dog right now here for 4-week board and train. She's a very anxious, flighty dog. She's like a Malinois mix.
You
like
crank
6
that
to 8
up
years
on
old.
her, she's just going to start sprinting and running away from nothing.
Yeah. So her number, when I'm working with her, is around 70, 80. We have a Great Dane that arrived yesterday, who's bigger than her, and his number was 28. Okay, so completely different numbers, but that's all stuff that we figure out during the training process.
There's food over there?
Okay. So the reason why the heel helps dogs that have reactivity issues is that it gets them to learn to focus on something, which would be you. And by focusing, the dog has to learn to turn their brain off, which is to relax and calm down. Okay. Once they understand how to turn off, they're able to then start relaxing. And it sounds kind of silly, but there are dogs that just don't know how to relax. They're just constantly needing something to do. So once we teach them to relax, naturally they want to opt for that because it's a more comfortable state of mind. Like no one wants to be like this all the time. At some point you get tired. So that can also be the first cause of frustration for the dog because they just simply can't relax. They're over threshold, they're always under stress, and then we put in, some environmental thing and all of a sudden they trigger. The exercises are simple and easy to replicate, and I train so that you can transfer it into the real world, okay? Where we train doesn't really matter. Currently, I'm still training out of my facility. This is actually the training space. But in the summertime, when the weather gets nice enough, I actually train out of Oz Park. And a lot of clients like that because they're training their dog in a very realistic environment. There's distractions, there's dogs, there's people. If their dog became reactive, I would work them through the reactivity. So they also like that because they get the kind of the hands-on experience. But I'm not having to touch the dog. 99.9% of the time, I don't have to touch the dog. If it's very difficult, then I'll step in to help. but otherwise I try not to because I don't want any of the training tied to me. What makes it effective is that the dog is being trained and is tying the training to you because it's you doing all the exercises. So that's one of the things that people will complain about is that like, oh, the dog would do the training with the trainer, but then won't do the training with me. And I'm like, it's because it's a trainer. So now the dog has a reference point, right? They go, okay, you know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. And then that's what goes against the progress there. So everything is based off the healing exercise. So class 1 and 2 are healing exercises, giving me feedback. I'll touch upon correcting reactivity. And on the third class, if it's like, hey, we're still struggling with this behavior, then we do controlled context. So that would be you show up here, I bring out a dog, and then we have to force the reactivity so that we can correct and work through it. The first approach is what we would call an indirect approach. If I teach the dog how to heal correctly, and it fixes 70% of the problem, that means an indirect approach that has nothing to do with the reactivity really fixed 70% of the problem. So then there's just what we call the residual, that last 30%, right? So the residual is to him greater than the meaning of heal, which is why the dog's still willing to exhibit those behaviors. So that's where we have to then force the problem, so to speak, and then correct the problem so he understands that it's not an acceptable behavior. So it would be similar to, let's say let's say he was social and a dog tried to mount him and then he bit the dog, right? That's not aggression. That's him saying, hey, I'm not allowing you to do that to me, right? So same thing here. If we have to force any of the reactivity so that we can correct it, he's going, okay, if I do this behavior, I will be corrected. So in order to avoid the correction, I'm going to then not do the behavior. Does that make sense? And then from there, we take that and we transfer it to the real world. So I had a client, or have a client now. We just had his fourth class. So it was his fourth class. The third class, he came, he's like, Jesse, the reactivity hasn't gotten any better. I go, no problem, we're gonna work on it today. It took me this is a very intense case, took me almost 45 minutes of the class just to finally get the dog to stop the reactivity. It was so intense as a blue healer, okay? After that class, and we incorporated a prong collar because we weren't doing prong collar either. After that class, he came back class 4 and he's like, hey, Jesse, reactive, but much easier to stop now. Whereas before he couldn't stop him, period. Because he was so bad, he didn't know what he was doing was correct, because he's not a trainer. So once we worked through it and he saw like, okay, what I was seeing was normal. My dog is just really crazy, but we worked through it. After that, because we set a foundation, he was able to correct the dog more easily. So now it's just a process of doing it consistently to eventually so the behavior goes away. Okay. What are your goals with the training?
I think we don't expect him to be a super playful dog with other dogs. I mean, if that were to happen, great. But literally just being tolerant of 1, our cat, and 2, other dogs that we pass by, and not having the intense reactivity of having to actively avoid other dogs. Especially because we've had a lot of instances of other dogs, especially smaller dogs, coming up to him, running to him.
Big thing about Pilsen is a lot of Chihuahuas off leash.
Yeah.
And if one of them runs up to him, we have to kind of scoop him up or just otherwise restrain him. That's.
Is that anywhere in Pilsen, when you're walking around, or is there certain yards that okay, that yard has?
I mean, there are a couple of yards, but it's every block has a couple of houses, and a lot of people will just walk their dogs around the neighborhood like that off leash, or just kind of let their dog out to go potty, and they'll just be kind of wandering around, and that's up. I mean, there is someone who lives 2 houses down who does that all the time. That sucks.
Have you ever told him anything? Hey, don't do that?
Yeah, I mean, we told him, hey, don't do that. And also, he's seen Bones almost rip his dog to shreds.
And still does it?
Yeah, he's old. He's stuck in his ways.
Sure, I gotcha.
Yeah, but literally just having him coexist with our cat and not having to
Not having to keep them constantly between a locked door between them.
Okay.
At all times, if one of us is there, it'd be nice to just have the doors open.
Sure.
But I want to be able to because Bobby is stronger. He can literally pick him up if there's a dog that comes at him. I want to be able to just tell him to stay there and not have to worry about me having to like restrain him and like hold him because I can't do that.
Yeah, because that's also like the last thing, like, or the thing that he was in with the other dog. Like, if I hadn't have been there, I don't know that anyone else involved would have been able to get Bones off. Like, I think the other dog was also very well trained, and the owner was telling it to like not do anything, so it wasn't. But yeah, and I think I don't know how long it would have taken someone else to get Bones out of there.
Sure, no, I understand.
And we have been kind of using sit as the thing for him to do when he's starting to whine and looks like he's going to start pulling after another dog. And that helps. He's able to do that somewhat. But yeah, a heel would be better.
He also, we've noticed since kind of being more reactive lately, where it seems like he's been kind of more stressed out like that, he has started resource guarding as well too. He has a cage that we put him in to sleep in, like if we need to be out of the house for a while, like he'll be in there, and he was fine before, but very recently he started like kind of consistently resource guarding, specifically about his food. He's fine with his water, but we'll have times where like we're trying to approach him and he will just immediately get aggressive about resource guarding.
And this is a newer behavior?
It's a newer behavior, but I think
recently.
it's correlated to stress in other parts of things, I think.
Okay.
Where like if he's had a walk where there's been a lot of dogs and he's needed to be corrected a bunch, he'll be overwhelmed, overstimulated, and I think just less confident in how interacting with people is going to be, so he wants his space.
Yeah, like that'll happen with like our bed sometimes. Like he'll go on there, and if we ask him to get up to go to his cage, like sometimes he will get reactive.
Okay.
Yeah, if you try and like move him, or if he's...
Have you tried physically pushing him, or do you just like try to coax him off?
I mean, physically pushing him, if he's physically pushing him, works well a lot of the time.
But he does get reactive sometimes with that too. Like he will snap at you, and he's like pulled blood out of Bobby from snapping at him before.
Okay. That's also like if he's in bed by himself and then you like kind of accidentally bump him with your foot, he'll like be surprised and take a snap at you. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know, because that's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
The tricky one, of course, is like the dog sleeping and you bump them.
Yeah.
Right, because it's startled. It's like, could you train it? Technically, yes, but then you have to force the problem, because that's really the only way to work around it. And the issue then would be, well, let's say we force the problem, like you don't have anything to protect you. So like when I deal with my human aggression cases, I walk in with a 60-pound bodysuit, you know, the 30-pound pants, 30-pound jacket, so it doesn't matter. So we can force the problem and correct the problem and then work through it.
Yeah.
But in this case, obviously, you guys are going to be walking around in a 60-pound bodysuit. So, but the other stuff like the bed thing, for sure, we can work on. The resource guarding can be worked on. Now, when he's fed, is he fed outside the kennel or in the kennel?
It's been in the kennel.
Okay.
Sometimes outside. Which also, I think another thing to note is the resource guarding. That didn't happen at all until that first incident with the dog, like many, many years ago.
Okay.
Like up until then, like you could give him a bowl of, it was actually weird. Like in the shelter, in order to get him out of the cage, they had to do the trick of like putting the slip lead around his bowl of food.
Oh, interesting. To lure him towards the door?
No, put the slip lead around the food, put food in the bowl, wear the whole like chainmail glove doodad, get his like head in the bowl, and then like do it like a noose trap.
He wasn't letting him to enter the kennel, or?
Yeah, no, he wouldn't let someone like put a leash on him.
I see.
And then but as soon as he was out of the kennel, super chill.
Fine. Yeah.
Which is why he was, he'd been in there for a couple of months.
Yeah.
But then when we got him home, he wasn't protective or resource guardy over anything until he got into the fight with that dog.
Sure. Okay. And how long did that fight happen after you got him?
6, 7, 8 months.
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, within the first year, but after he'd been there for a while.
Gotcha. All right. Anything else that I should know about with Bones?
That's it. The home stuff is the only other thing.
Okay. So I would, let me think here. At minimum, and I'm assuming you're looking for in-person training?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, even.
It's because there's board and trains, daycare trains, and then there's in-person.
Yeah, no, in-person.
In-person you learn the most because I'm training you to train your dog.
Yeah, that sounds, yeah, that's right.
That's the pro of it, is you learn so much more. There's going to be failures involved, but that's how we learn.
That's fine.
The con is it just takes longer.
That's fine.
I would at minimum put you at around 9 classes. You could do 12 if you wanted, just to make sure that you had all your bases covered. And 12 is my longest, okay? The way I would break it down is we have 2 on heel, 1 on reactivity, okay? Almost always, we don't need more than those 3. Every now and then, if it's very difficult, we can always do another one. 1 on stationary control, which is the place command, which is what you see those dogs doing up there on the TV. They're all on their beds, right? That's one of the things that's going to help with the cat coexistence. This is one of the things that I did with my previous client. And there's 2 different kinds of coexistence. There's controlled coexistence. You are there, you can't move from there, right? So then it's like, okay, well, I know Bones isn't going to move, so I can be more relaxed, right?
Yeah.
And then there's organic coexistence where he's not under command. And the cat obviously is not under command. So they're organically coexisting, right? They're both doable. One is obviously easier than the other because it's controlled. But if we're trying to get to a more kind of, or as close to normalcy as possible, organic is a part of that.
Yeah.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'd cover the organic coexistence.
Yeah.
How do we start correcting things? Getting them used to the cat. Ideally, we want him to be disinterested in the cat. That's how we get coexistence. Whether or not they're friends remains to be seen.
Yeah, it's up to them.
6-1, I would highly suggest we cover recall, which is come when called.
Oh, yeah.
Every dog should have a come when called. What was the other thing? The resource guarding would be a couple of classes. So that puts us at 7, 8. What was the 9th one? Oh, the bed thing. That'd be a class, right? Yeah. So those things alone, I'm confident would take the 9. If you did 12, it essentially just gives us 3 extra classes in case something takes longer than we anticipate. I unfortunately can't predict things. Yeah. Sometimes it's straightforward and all of a sudden we hit this roadblock and it's like we need to cover something. And in certain cases, to conserve our classes as best we can, like with the reactivity, it's a really difficult case. Once we do the controlled context and I go, this is how we work through it, I'll tell the owner, don't book the next class until you feel confident in it. So I might not see them for 2 to 3 weeks. Because it doesn't make sense to keep doing classes covering the same thing over and over again, you know, where I can help them via email. And then once they get it done and I go, Jesse, it's been a couple of weeks, reactivity's been great, then they go, great, now let's book that 4th class, if that makes sense. Okay. And if you decided, like, no, we want you to come out, we need to do it again, I go, sure. And then I come out and do it again. But I, of course, want you to get the most out of the time that you have with me. Okay, so at minimum 9, 12 is kind of like, all right, we have our bases covered, so we have extra classes if needed. Okay, the collar that I recommend for him, and Tina will send all this information, is the Dr. Black edition. Okay, it's the best collar there is. It's the highest powered collar there is. The reason why I recommend it is because, again, intensity. I don't know if his number is going to be low or his number is going to be high. That's all stuff that we figure out during the training. Okay, but with that collar, I have the least amount of worry because I know this is the best collar there is. Okay. If you get, I don't care where you get the collar from, if you get it through us, you do get 10% off. It runs around $350-ish with tax. After the discount with us, it runs around $305-ish with tax. Okay. And then if something happens to it, I can easily exchange it for you in that first month. Otherwise, it does come with the 1-year warranty. It's a fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver. You're only going to be using it when you're training. Okay, so it's not something that he wears 24/7. Okay, now once we start to move the training inside the home, like with the cat and stuff, obviously he's going to be wearing it for longer periods of time. So you need to rotate it.
Yeah.
Just because we don't want to develop get pressure sores. It's from the two probes sticking against the neck for the long period of time. It heals up, fur grows back. It's not a big deal, but we can avoid that by rotating the collar. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that I can only take you as far as you're willing to go. Okay. Pitties and blue heelers are like the craziest breeds when it comes to reactivity and aggression type stuff. For pitties, it's kind of bred into them. You know, they're meant to fight other dogs. So an anxious pittie is completely different than like an anxious German Shepherd. Because the intensity that they were bred for fuels the anxiety. Okay, same thing if I'm dealing with the fearful pittie and so on and so forth. So what that means is, like, let's say we're doing the reactivity stuff. Let's say it happens to be a difficult case, right? And his number is 100, for example. And then you come back the following class and I go, how's it going? You're like, oh, Jesse, it's terrible. He's still reactive. The first thing I'm going to ask is, well, where's your number at? Because that's almost always the thing that people are struggling with. And it's like, oh, we're at 45. I'm like, well, that's why we're struggling with reactivity, because we've already determined he needs 100 for the reactivity, okay? Now, we do start low and we work our way up. We don't just assume it's going to be 100, okay? So when I see certain cases, I look at them and I go, oh, this case is probably going to be up there, right? But even though I know that, and I could just jump in and do that right away, the owner needs to see the process. So if we do end up in these high level ranges, they go, well, it makes sense because we started all the way at 15, and not till we hit 127 that the dog finally stopped the behavior. So it makes sense to them. It kind of validates the fact of why we're that high. If I just assume it and jump there, they go, well, how do I know nothing else would have worked? Okay, so there's a process to it, but I do that just so that you guys, that you are aware that, okay, Jesse's not just a jerk that Zach talks at 100.
We both had experience with him on the prong collar and how hard he will pull on the prong collar before he stops doing, before he starts stops trying to go after a dog and will pay attention to anything else. Yeah, e-collar is just a step above the prong. They work very well together as well. And what's great about remote collar is, like, let's say we determine his number is 45. When you press 45 and you press 45, it's the same. Right? So you mentioned earlier, it's hard for you to control him, right? We don't really have to worry so much about that with the remote collar because it's pretty much doing the bulk of the work for you. Same feedback from both of us.
Correct. Okay. Question on any of that stuff?
Sounds good.
A very common question I get is, when does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Right? So every time you go for a walk, you have your collar on. The cat thing, it's interesting. The cat thing is the one thing that is more likely where you could move past the collar because they're around each other 24/7. Does that make sense?
Eventually, he just ignores the cat.
Correct. Yep. I would still recommend under control context, right? But that's more realistic because it's controlled context. It's the home. It's his 24/7. Whereas outside, it's unpredictable. There could be a neighbor that lets their chihuahua off on the sidewalk, right? So that's where you always want to have your collar on. If you were to be at a park or something like that, or like, let's say enclosed area, you have your ability to recall him. You also have the ability to turn off his reactivity. So, like, let's say he's minding his business, a dog charges the fence from the opposite side, which then instigates him to charge the fence back. You now have the ability to disengage him from that altercation, okay? Unfortunately, we cannot predict things in life, which is why I suggest whenever you're out, you'd have that collar on, okay? Otherwise, if he's a great dog, you don't need it in those other contexts, okay? The resource guarding will take a bit longer. It's easy for me to teach you. It's just, it takes a lot of time and repetition before you get to that point, okay? Let me think here. That's pretty much it. Any other questions, anything that you may have forgotten to ask?
I don't think so.
Okay. So you could talk about it, and then once you come to a decision, you can let Tina know, and she'll send you an email with the pricing and everything like that. It is one-on-one, so it's just you and me. We're training here still. We may move to Oz Park. That just depends on my schedule. I'll probably be at Oz Park on the weekends. And during the week, I'll probably still be here just because I have a number of responsibilities. I do our transport, so I pick up the dogs and drop them off during the week just because we need you'd be surprised how many people don't know how to drive today. And I need someone who knows how to drive. So, so that's me doing a lot of that. So my schedule's a bit wonky right now. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We may hit some emotional, unpleasant scenarios. Okay, because we're dealing with an aggressive type behavior. So what that means, if he's becoming agitated and he's very resilient to the collar, that number's going up. You might get vocalization. Okay, and that's usually what bugs people because they feel like they're hurting the dog. I go, no, dogs bite each other. This here is actually a dog bite. You can see that scar. It's 10 stitches. This is from a Great Dane, which usually surprises people because Great Danes are known as the gentle giants. He was not an aggressive dog. He just didn't want to go in a kennel because he had never been kenneled before, and he freaked out, and he bit me in response. So I didn't take it personally. Once I healed up, they brought him back. I trained him after that, and he's been a great dog. But I always try to paint things as worst as possible. And if you go, well, Jesse said this is a worst case scenario, we can do it, then I can help you. But if we end up there and I paint it as it's going to be very simple, very easy, and then it's like, hey, like being expected to be like this, I go, well, sorry, it's the territorial of behavioral stuff. Okay?
Yeah.
It could also be very straightforward. I just don't know what it's going to be. Okay?
How long are sessions typically if we're doing one-on-one with
An
you?
hour.
An hour.
Yeah. An hour for you.
Great, buddy.
Other questions?
No, I don't think so.
And we typically meet once a week. So like if, for example, Sunday at 12 was available and it worked for you, every Sunday at 12 I'd see you for an hour. Okay?
Okay.
If something came up and you need to reschedule, you just reach out to Tina. She'll either push it back or put you on a different day. We do give, I think it's a 48-hour window. So as long as you reschedule outside of that window, we're good. If you schedule within those 48 hours, it's harder for her to book my slot, especially when I'm already at Oz Park. So then I'm just at the park for an hour doing nothing.
Yeah.
So we always give people a freebie because we understand things happen. But then after that, it does count as a class. Okay. It's usually not an issue. And if there's anything that you may have forgotten, you can always ping Tina. If they pertain to me, she'll email me. I'll email the answer back and she'll forward it to you. Otherwise, if you do decide to move forward with training, you will get my email, and any training questions, you could always just refer to me. Okay? And I tell all my clients, you have my technical support forever. Any questions, big or small, I welcome them. Even once the program is over, it's been 5 years, something pops up, you have a question, ping me with an email. I'm happy to answer them. Okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
No.
All right. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so
Nothing I haven't seen before, nothing out the ordinary. And if you have any questions, like I said, just feel free to reach out. Okay? Awesome.
Great.